Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty fascinating world where incredibly strict facility controls act as, basically, invisible shields. They're there to protect life-saving therapies from microscopic threats. We're going to look closely at the facility design, GMP, and biosafety protocols that are absolutely crucial to ensure advanced therapies, like viral vectors and mRNA, are completely safe for patients.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with facility design and layout, then move into mastering contamination control, followed by biosafety and containment levels. After that, we'll touch on digital systems and assurance, and finally, wrap things up with our vector case study.
So here's a massive challenge for you to think about. How do you manufacture a virus without contaminating literally everything else in the facility? It's a logistical nightmare, right? Well, as we go through this explainer, you'll see exactly how multiple layers of defense work together to prevent a single microscopic breach from ruining a multi-million-dollar batch.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Facility Design and Layout.
To really ground these concepts for us today, let's introduce Vectra Biomanufacturing. Now, this is our fictional case study site, and they have a seriously tough job. They have to juggle multiple, highly complex platforms. We're talking AAV, lentiviral, and mRNA LNP operations. And they're doing it all simultaneously under one roof.
So how do they do it? Well, segregation forms the very first physical barrier in what we call the Swiss cheese model of risk management. Basically, by physically separating different products, vector types, or processing stages, a facility like Vectra actively stops cross-contamination before it even has a chance to start.
But in the real world, physical space is often really tight, and that's exactly where campaigning comes in. Facilities will actually dedicate a specific suite to just one product for a defined period of time. Then, once that campaign is over, they execute incredibly strict cleaning and changeover protocols before the next product is even allowed in the room. So it's separation by time rather than just physical space.
The really crucial takeaway here is that a successful facility strategy doesn't rely on just one method. No way. Instead, it seamlessly combines three layers: physical segregation, temporal campaigning, and closed systems that actually contain the process itself. Put those all together, and you've got a seriously robust defense.
So, take a quick second and think about what we just discussed. Which facility strategies, when working together, actually keep these completely different vectors from mixing?
Well, this essentially hits the nail on the head. You simply can't rely on just one single control. Relying on a strategic, combined approach of segregation, campaigning, and closed, single-use systems is what creates that true, fail-safe environment against cross-contamination.
Let's look at how this actually dictates physical movement inside the building. Think about how personnel and material flows have to be designed. Through incredibly strict cleanroom classifications mapping to specific ISO grades, unidirectional flow, which just means people and materials only ever move in one forward direction, and carefully managed air pressure cascades, we essentially trap our invisible enemies. We stop them from literally traveling down the hallway on a technician's suit.
But you gotta remember, control starts way before manufacturing even begins. The warehouse has to strictly monitor cold and frozen storage. Because these advanced platforms are so incredibly sensitive to temperature, rigorous temperature mapping is absolutely essential. I mean, a single temperature excursion, that can instantly destroy highly sensitive raw materials or even finished products.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, Mastering Contamination Control.
Now, while basic microbial control applies across the board, different platforms actually have their own distinct enemies. For example, mRNA faces the unique, totally invisible threat of RNases. That requires highly specific platform-level controls. On the flip side, viral vectors have to be rigorously protected against cross-contamination from entirely different vector serotypes floating around the exact same facility.
And to prove these invisible enemies are actually defeated, facilities don't just guess, they verify. They rely on constant environmental monitoring to give them independent evidence of control. They use validated cleaning programs, and they strictly verify single-use system integrity. They're out there checking for pre-use leaks just to make absolutely sure a plastic bag hasn't sprung a catastrophic invisible breach.
Let's dive right into Section 3, Biosafety and Containment Levels.
I want you to think about the biological nature of the therapies themselves for a second. Why might an oncolytic viral vector warrant a totally different containment posture than, say, a well-characterized, replication-defective AAV vector? Are all viruses equally dangerous to the operator?
The short answer, absolutely not.
Biosafety always has to be matched to the specific biology. Vectors with replication capability carry very distinct hazards and require entirely different and usually much higher containment levels than replication-defective vectors. Containment is definitely not some one-size-fits-all checklist. It is strictly dictated by that specific genetically modified organism's ability to replicate and cause harm.
And you know, those tailored containment levels, they directly inform the broader facility operations. The specific biology dictates exactly how the site handles occupational safety against biological hazards, what kind of regulatory environmental assessments and permits are needed, and the precise methods they have to use for the safe decontamination and disposal of biological waste.
All right, Section 4, Digital Systems and Assurance.
Automation plays a massive role in all of this. Electronic batch records and process control systems guarantee that our data remains attributable, accurate, and completely reliable. That data integrity is everything. And alarm management systems are directly tied to this, ensuring that if a critical deviation happens in any of those physical rooms we toured earlier, boom, an alarm triggers instantly, so operators can respond right away.
But because these digital systems support crucial GMP quality decisions, we can't just plug them in and cross our fingers. They have to go through a rigorous, risk-proportionate, computerized system assurance lifecycle, the whole shebang. That starts from the initial specification, moves through configuration and testing, into active use, and finally, incredibly strict change control.
And finally, Section 5, the vector case study. Let's bring it all together.
So to manage their highly complex mix of AAV, lentiviral, and mRNA operations, our fictional Vectra conducted a comprehensive zoning review. And the results? They led to totally updated procedures for unidirectional personnel and material flow. By perfectly integrating their facility design, campaigning, and closed systems, they successfully engineered a foolproof way to prevent RNases from hitching a ride into their ultra-sensitive mRNA suites. A real success story.
So, we've seen how today's GMP facilities conquer some truly incredible biological risks through meticulous layout, strict containment, and digital assurance. But it definitely leaves you wondering, as therapies become even more personalized and biologically complex in the future, what radical facility designs will the next generation of advanced therapies demand? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helped you clearly visualize the invisible shields that make advanced biomanufacturing possible.